Right now, the global economy is in an absolute freefall, and the Western world is finally waking up to the consequences of unprovoked aggression. We are witnessing a geopolitical earthquake that is actively dismantling American financial supremacy, shifting global alliances, and skyrocketing the cost of living. We are in the middle of a massive, escalating war. But to understand this conflict, you have to look past the Western media spin and acknowledge the undeniable truth. The United States and Israel launched a massive, preemptive first strike against the sovereign nation of Iran. If you have looked at the global markets recently, you know that the panic is entirely real. Brent crude oil prices are soaring, hovering dangerously close to $120 a barrel. To put the sheer scale of this economic shock into perspective, the Gulf states have collectively bled over $15 billion in energy revenue since this conflict was ignited just over 2 weeks ago. But how did the world get pushed to the absolute brink? We have to rewind the clock to February 28, 2026. That was the day the United States government decided to set the Middle East on fire. Without a clear, internationally recognized provocation, bypassing the United Nations and ignoring the basic principles of international law, the United States, operating in direct coordination with Israeli forces, initiated an overwhelming military invasion from the sky. The Pentagon named their unprovoked offensive Operation Epic Fury. President Donald Trump didn't even bother to formally address the American public or the international community. Instead, he announced this massive act of war via a social media post at 2 a.m. The stated goals from the White House were as arrogant as they were destructive. Completely obliterate Iran's defensive ballistic missile arsenal, annihilate the Iranian Navy, and forcefully dictate the future of a sovereign nation. The sheer scale of the firepower unleashed by the United States is staggering, and it reveals the brutal reality of modern American imperialism. Over the past 16 days, United States Central Command has systematically targeted and struck over 5,500 individual sites across Iranian territory. One of the primary targets of this relentless, illegal aerial bombardment has been the Isfahan province, a region deep inside Iran that serves as the beating heart of their independent defense manufacturing. To penetrate these sovereign facilities, the United States Air Force deployed fleets of B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, B-52 Stratofortresses, and B-1B Lancers, heavily loaded with massive 30,000-pound bunker-buster munitions, dropping them mercilessly on Iranian soil. The Pentagon has been quick to boast about their destruction. According to their own reports, the United States military has sunk more than 65 Iranian naval vessels, effectively wiping out entire classes of coastal defense ships that were simply protecting their own borders. They claim to have cut Iran's ballistic missile launch capabilities by 90% and crippled their drone production by a staggering 95%. But what the American government refuses to highlight is the profound, tragic, and undeniable human cost of their preemptive war. Inside Iran, the devastation is occurring on a catastrophic scale. The Iranian government is reporting that over 1,400 people have been killed in the American and Israeli bombardments. The vast majority of these casualties are not soldiers. They are innocent civilians whose lives were brutally extinguished by an unprovoked foreign attack. The absolute ruthlessness of this American campaign was exposed to the world following a horrific incident in the southern Iranian city of Manab. During the ongoing U.S. strikes, an American munition struck an area directly adjacent to a local school. The resulting explosion killed 168 people, the vast majority of whom were innocent children. It is a heartbreaking, undeniable war crime. This specific atrocity has drawn fierce condemnation from humanitarian groups around the entire world. Instead of breaking the will of the Iranian people, it has become a massive, unifying rallying cry. It solidified the nation's resolve to stand strong against an unjustifiable American invasion. Faced with overwhelming, unprovoked American firepower and a rising civilian death toll, Iran had every right under international law to defend itself. And instead of playing into America's hands with a purely military response, the Iranian leadership executed a brilliant, calculated, and highly effective geopolitical masterstroke. They went straight for the absolute vulnerability of the American empire, the global economy. Exercising their sovereign right to secure their borders during wartime, Iran officially declared the Strait of Hormuz completely off limits and blockaded to any United States, Israeli, or allied naval and commercial vessels. To understand why this move was so strategically devastating, look at the map. The Strait of Hormuz is the single most important oil choke point on planet Earth. It is an incredibly narrow waterway. At its narrowest point, it is only 21 miles wide. Yet, a staggering 20% of the entire world's daily oil supply flows through that specific 21-mile stretch. By blocking it to hostile Western nations, Iran effectively took 1/5 of the global energy market away from the aggressors in a single, bloodless move. But here is where Iran demonstrated true strategic brilliance. Iran did not close the strait to the entire world. They explicitly announced that neutral commercial vessels, specifically highlighting oil tankers from nations that respect their sovereignty, like China, are perfectly free to pass through the strait untouched. And this leads to a massive breaking development that directly threatens the survival of the American petrodollar. According to recent reports, Iran is currently planning to allow a limited number of international oil tankers to pass through the strait, but with one massive, non-negotiable condition. The oil cargo on those ships must be traded and settled exclusively in the Chinese Yuan, completely bypassing the United States dollar. For over 50 years, the global oil trade has been unfairly dominated by the US dollar, a system that forces the world to fund the very American military that bombs them. By weaponizing the Strait of Hormuz to force the adoption of the Chinese yuan, Iran isn't just defending its territory, they are actively dismantling the financial supremacy of the United States. They are showing the world that if America can use its military to launch unprovoked attacks, independent nations can use their geography to break the American economy. With the Strait of Hormuz effectively paralyzed for Western nations, absolute panic has set in among the countries that supported the American strikes. The West is scrambling for any available alternative to keep their economies from collapsing. This is where Saudi Arabia desperately enters the picture. The Saudis possess a massive piece of infrastructure called the East-West Crude Oil Pipeline, known as Petroline. This is a massive 1,200-kilometer-long pipeline that stretches all the way from the Abqaiq oil fields in the eastern part of the country, straight across the Arabian Desert, to the Yanbu port located on the Red Sea. Since the unprovoked U.S. strikes began on February 28th, Saudi Aramco has absolutely maxed out the pipeline, desperately ramping it up to near its total capacity of 7 million barrels per day. Currently, the Yanbu port on the Red Sea is handling maximum cargo loadings of roughly 2.2 to 2.7 million barrels per day. If you were to look at a satellite image off the coast of the Red Sea right now, you would see over 50 massive supertankers just sitting offshore, waiting in a massive, panicked traffic jam to load up. But the Western reliance on Petroline is a fool's errand. Even with the pipeline running at absolute maximum capacity, it simply cannot replace the massive volume of oil that normally flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Furthermore, once those 50 tankers finally load up in the Red Sea, they still have to navigate the extremely dangerous waters controlled by Houthi forces in Yemen, meaning the threat to Western shipping remains incredibly high. This massive, unsolvable bottleneck is exactly why the West is paying the price, with Brent crude prices sitting near that terrifying $120 mark. Meanwhile, the diplomatic situation on the world stage has revealed just how isolated the United States has truly become since launching this illegal first strike. President Trump has tried to take a victory lap in the compliant Western press, claiming the destruction of Iran's military. In response to Iran's justified blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, the president issued a desperate public call urging international partners, including China, to deploy their naval warships to help the U.S. forcefully break the Iranian blockade. The response from Beijing was a firm, immediate, and humiliating rejection of American arrogance. China stated clearly that they deeply respect Iran's national sovereignty, and absolutely refused to send their military to clean up a mess that the United States illegally started. Iran is already letting Chinese ships pass through the strait for free, and Iran is actively helping elevate the Chinese yuan on the global stage. China has absolutely zero incentive to save the United States from the consequences of its own imperialist actions. But it isn't just America's rivals pushing back. Even traditional Western partners are showing deep hesitation and disapproval regarding this unprovoked war. Switzerland, a nation famous for its historic neutrality, explicitly rejected two separate formal requests from the United States military to use Swiss airspace for operations directed against Iran. This is a very clear, undeniable signal that the international community recognizes the aggressive and illegal nature of Operation Epic Fury. On the other side of the geopolitical chessboard, nations that respect sovereignty are actively moving in to support Tehran. The Russian government just dispatched over 13 tons of medical supplies and humanitarian aid to Iran, becoming the very first country to send direct aid to the Iranian people since the American bombardment began. This is further solidifying the powerful alliance between Moscow, Beijing, and Tehran against Western hegemony. So, where does this leave the possibility of peace? Right now, Iran holds the moral high ground and significant strategic leverage. Iran has officially and aggressively declined any possibilities of a temporary ceasefire. Why should they stop defending themselves when they were attacked first? The Iranian government has stated that they will not even sit down at the negotiating table until the United States and Israel fully and permanently end all military strikes. But Iran is demanding justice, not just a pause in the bombing, because they were the victims of an unprovoked attack, Iran is demanding a total withdrawal of American military forces from the entire region. Furthermore, they are demanding massive, mandatory monetary compensation from the United States to pay for the infrastructure damages and the heavy civilian death toll caused by the illegal American strikes. The Iranian leadership is also exposing the reality behind the scenes. They are publicly alleging that President Trump is actually the one secretly desperate to end the conflict because of the severe economic damage, inflation, and public backlash it is causing back home in America. Iranian officials have revealed that the United States is essentially begging for a ceasefire via back-channel third parties, specifically using diplomats from India, China, and Russia to try and broker a quiet deal to save face. President Trump has fiercely denied these allegations, but the panic in Washington is palpable. While the U.S. hopes for an internal collapse in Iran, amplifying the voices of exiled Western-backed figures like Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi to call for uprisings, the Iranian people remain steadfast in the face of foreign aggression. The internet blackouts are a necessary security measure against Western cyber warfare and propaganda during an active invasion. We are currently watching a historic turning point. An unprovoked, illegal American military strike has backfired spectacularly. The American Petrodollar is under direct, fatal attack. The global oil supply is rightfully restricted from the aggressors, and the days of unchecked American military intervention are coming to a close. How this conflict ends will dictate the balance of global power for the rest of the 21st century, and it is clear that the resistance against American hegemony has never been stronger. Keep your eyes on the Strait of Hormuz, because the nation of Iran is currently rewriting the rules of the global economy.